In this chapter segment, I'd like to concentrate on the benefits of creating a site from scratch, and specifically the benefits of creating your own graphics template. In this example, we're going to use Expression Design, and we'll take it from there. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we're working on Chapter 6, so we'll just pop that open in Expression Web, and we're working on creating a website from scratch. So step 1, site, new site. You can do a one-page site or an empty site, doesn't really matter. I prefer the empty site. We're going to put this one at, let's see, we'll call it Chapter 6. And I don't need it on my manage list. And then we'll click OK. And that's an empty site. One benefit of creating a site while you have Expression Web open is it'll close the site that you were previously working on and start you fresh with a new site. So what we're going to do next is File, Import File. And then we'll do Add File. And I want to find this one. And then we'll click OK. This file here is the art that we used in Chapter 6. And because of the time limitations on this video, what we're going to do is just concentrate on some of the benefits. And if you double click this in Expression Web, it will open in Expression Design. And now that it spins up, it'll open on the artboard. And there we are. So let's hide the slice layer, which is critical, but we can always come back to that. And let's just zoom in a little bit on this. And I think for clarity, we'll just unpin these. And so we have text along a path here, and we have some brush strokes. And if you go into Chapter 6, you'll be able to follow all the steps required to create all these graphics. It's a real simple graphics template. It doesn't have a lot of complexity to it, and the reason that we did that was to give you a fighting chance to be able to do this. Now, let's bring back this Layers panel and pin it. And what we have here is the slice layer. And the slice layer, we experimented with that in the previous video by slicing the fish image. This slice layer will cut up this piece of graphics into a number of pieces. So up here, obviously we've got the banner. Here, I want this as a content background because that little line right there will tile and repeat and repeat and repeat until it hits the bottom. This is going to be the footer. And we put this here strictly so that we could sample out these colors when we try to build the CSS. In fact, let me open up the properties and pin it. And then you can go into let's say we'll take an object. Oh, see, I keep grabbing the slice map. Let's say we take an object like this. And we can also go into the color swatches, and if we click this drop down, we've got this really nice set of unified color swatches, desert camo, gradients, and so on and so forth. And it goes from the hue spectrum, warm to cold, and then you have metal textures, ocean view swatches, blah, blah, blah. I just happened to pick the beach swatches and then picked a few colors. Cool colors, warm colors, and at least they're all within the same color spectrum to the extent that they'll match and contrast appropriately. So once we do this, we can put our slice on it, and then we can do File, Export. Now each of these has been pre-named. Each slice has a name, and that will carry over onto the actual graphic. And where we're going to save this is Users, Chris Documents, Microsoft Press, Chapter 6. So it only remembers this because I did it once before. But in this case, if it didn't remember it, we would click Browse as we did in the previous, browse into the folder we want, and that would be it. And so we want HTML and images. That's the container. If you remember in the previous step, we had no container or HTML and images, and I'd mentioned these Silverlight. So we're going to take that. We're going to call the container name document.html. We could change this to any word we wanted, and then we'll click Export All. Let's just minimize this for now. And if you come back to a site after you've done work with it and you don't see your assets, do View, Refresh, and there they are. So there's our document HTML. And it's kind of interesting too, because what Expression Design will do is actually create a div, and that's header JPEG. And then if you roll up, you can see that the background is document files, header JPEG, no repeat, blah, blah, blah. This is valuable to keep because we can refer to this as we start to build the actual styles that we need. So let's do New HTML, and there's our new page. This will serve as the basis of the template that we're going to create. First, we'll create it as an HTML page, and then we'll roll it over into a dynamic web template for easier use on other files. So let's pause it here. I'll prepare this sample site with the required files just to make it a little bit quicker so that you don't have to watch, you know, a 45-minute dissertation on creating sample files. So let's pause here and we'll come right back. All right, I've imported the Chapter 6 assets, which you can get from the download site at O'Reilly, and I just have them in here as a reference. So what we're going to do is take our untitled page, and what we need to do is get started. And the first thing that we're going to start with is, from the HTML tags group, we're going to grab a div and drop this into here. We'll go New Style, and for now we're going to define it in the page, and then at the end of this I'll show you how to roll them from the page to an external style sheet. So we're going to call this one Container, and this is the main box that everything else is going to reside in. And so what we want to do is we'll go to Box, Padding 0, Margin 0, and then let's see, let's give a background to this. We don't need a background color, but we could use white. What we do want is a background image, so we're going to browse, and we'll browse into the document files and container, and then we want to repeat background repeat of Y, and that's top to bottom, and that'll give us that line that I'd mentioned when we were looking at the graphics. Let's see, what else might we want to do here? Let's go to the box category once more and make sure everything's good. We're not going to have margin, we're not going to have border. Let's do in the alignment, left and right. We'll set that to auto, and then we'll set the default alignment of the page. And what it'll do basically is give us a box that floats in the center of the page. I think that the final thing that we'll want to do is in the position category, we'll give it the position of 900 pixels, and we'll give it a height. Oop, that's in the wrong slot. Let's cut that. Width, 900 pixels, height, 100%. That'll be about all we need for right now. And then you can see in here, it's got all the code. So there's our container. And if we roll over to the side, we can see that we have a little bit of shadowing and everything. And so the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to drop another div in here, and we're going to call this one the header. So div. And it's really important when you do this to watch and make sure that this div is inside of the container. You can't have it below or it won't work right. So we'll just type header in here so that it makes it easier to identify. And we're going to do new style, an ID of header, and what we need is a background of header. We're going to go to position and give it a width of 900, a height of 200, and we'll apply the selection. Okay, now we'll just click OK, and there's our header. The next thing we're going to need to do is add some additional divs, and when we're done, this document will contain 5 divs. So what I'm going to do is, let's go back and modify this. I can remember one thing that I wanted to do. Now keep in mind, these steps are listed in the book. So don't get too hung up on this video. I just want the video to give you an idea. We want no repeat. The reason we want no repeat is in case we put content in this header, we do not want this whole image to tile over and over. And so that's how we're going to deal with it now. So the next divs that we're going to want are going to be for the menu, and then the content, and then of course the footer. So let's just add them now. And since it's tight, wherein the header is well inside of the body, what I'd like you to do is drag the divs onto the page here, and then we can work this way. And we'll do, are we outside of the header? Yes, we are. So this div, menu, I'm going to drag another one down. That div, content. And now our final div, let's hit Control Z to undo that. You can see what happened is I dropped it after the container div, and it just won't work. So let's go, and we'll just drop it right next to there, and then we'll put inside of this footer. Now this is messy, so we'll just right click this page and we'll do reformat HTML. And if we come down here, you can see that it's stacked them up nice and it's a lot more readable. Watch, we'll click it, there's our menu, there's our content, there's our footer. And what I'm going to do is pause the camera and add the styles we need for these particular elements, and then we'll come back and I'll explain them in the page, because there's no reason for you to sit for an extended period of time as I make these styles by hand. But keep in mind, in the book, it's a 50-step segment and every single move is documented. So let's pause this, we'll come back with a little bit more completion. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've copied all of the styles from container all the way down to menu, list item, anchor, hover. And I grabbed them from the style sheet that you'll find in the completed version of this site. And I grabbed them from main CSS. Now, you'll notice that this container.jpg is in images. Now watch, this is kind of neat. We'll close this out. The reason that it's not showing any of our styles is because it's asking for images such as, let's get up to something visual, header.jpg. So what we're going to do to make this work is take this unsaved page and we'll do File, Save. I want to save it in document files and I want to call it default HTML. Now everything shows up. or at least it should. Let's diagnose why this isn't working. Oh, here's why it's not working. We have to apply div id equals menu. When I do that, the menu div becomes appropriate. This is it, and it's real easy to ID the divs the same name as what they're supposed to be. ID equals content. And since it's on the page, it's a clickable option here. And then our final is div ID footer. Now let's see how it looks. Now that's about what we expected it to look like. We've got one more thing that we'd like to do, and that's going to be, let's import file, add file, and then we'll go into, I want that lazy dog text, and then we'll just import that. I'll open that up, we'll grab it all, come back to our default page, and then what we'll do is, since this is highlighted, we're going to paste that content right into the code. And now you can get an idea of what your content is going to look like. We've styled the headers to look like the headers and so on and so forth. The other thing that I did when I was originally building this is we're going to just take this and we'll turn it back to a paragraph. The one file that we haven't used is colors JPEG. And it's always nice to be able to see them, because let's say we want to take this H1, and when we select it, we can see H1. And what we could do is right-click this, do modify style. And this is the reason I like to put a color swatch for each color of the theme. Grab that, and we can turn all of the H1s blue, just like that. And so if we created another H1, let's say at the end of this paragraph, we could go we'll turn the paragraph to an H1, and it's blue, just like that one. But let's take this away. Get rid of that. Let's see what color we were using on these. Oh, we've actually styled all of the headers to have this blue color. Let's go back, grab that, modify it, and if I remember right, I believe we used this mauve color. So we'll go. Now all of our headers are back to the color that we wanted. And it's really easy to do, and it helps give you global change. So what we're going to do next is copy some of the content out of this. So let's go into here. We'll go into images, and let's grab our dynamic web template. So let's go, we're inside of the header. And then so what we can do is select tag contents, copy it, come back to our page, we're inside of the header, select tag contents, and then we can just do paste. And then there's your page title. And we'll repeat this for all of the different, so we're inside of div menu, select tag contents, copy. We'll come back to our default, set our cursor in the div menu, select tag contents, and paste. And then finally, we'll go down to our footer. We'll select it, select tag contents, switch quickly back to this, come down to the bottom, div footer, select tag contents, copy it, back to here, and paste. Now, when you're actually making a template from scratch, you don't have a previous example to copy from, but you're also not fighting against the timeline of a video. For me, to be able to recreate this from scratch would take about maybe an hour, hour and a half as I tweak things and get things exactly the way I want them. And that's basically how it works. So what we're going to do when we come back next is we're going to convert this document to a dynamic web template, and then we're going to create all of the pages that we need. So I guess we can call the next segment architecture, and we'll take it from there. So once all the work is done of creating this default page, we're going to create a dynamic web template. Now you might wonder why create a default page first and then roll it over to a dynamic web template. Well, the reason is simple. We can have this page active. Let me save it and then preview it. You cannot preview a dynamic web template. The DWT has to be attached to a page in order for you to preview it. So when you want to preview in a browser, it's much easier to quickly preview a default page. So let's close this out and return to here, and we're going to do New, Page, and then we're going to pick Dynamic Web Template. We're going to save it, and I want to save it in Chapter 6 Document Files, Main, DWT. Now in the book, we go a little bit deeper with this, but let's start here. Let me close out this. This is the original DWT from the completed steps. We don't need this. We'll close it. We do need that. We don't need that. So this will just help me maintain my sanity by having the 2 pages I want to work on open. So, first step is we're going to grab all of this style stuff. A little bit far. From the style to the style, close tag. Copy it, come over here, and we'll put it in the head. We're going to take it out of the head and move it to its own page shortly. We can also put a lot of content within this editable region, but we don't need to do that right now. We're going to go back to default. I'm going to set my cursor anywhere inside the body. I'm going to select the tag contents, copy them, come back to this main DWT. Now you'll notice that it's got one big div inside of it and it's editable. We don't want any of that stuff, so what we'll do is body, select tag contents, and then paste. We will need an editable region or else it's not much of a template. So what we'll do is set our insertion point here and click div content to select the whole tag. From the format, we will go to dynamic web template, manage editable regions, and we're going to add another one called content, and then add it. And you can see in the code that it's added the opening DWT tag, and if we come down to the bottom, you can see that it closes it out here. We also have one that I'd inadvertently copied when we were copying the content, and that's this. So by doing it, we can allow the user to change this title for the page banner and change the content in here and effectively lock them out of here, here, and the footer. And that's going to be really helpful. So let's continue with this and save it. There's one more thing I want to do. New, page, and I want a CSS file. I'm going to save it as main CSS. And I want to save it in the document files folder. Generally I'll call it images, but for this we'll just call it, we'll leave it as document files and save it in there. We'll come back to main WT and do CSS styles, attach style sheet, browse to it, grab it, and then hit OK. Now, see what's happened here? It shows current page and all of these styles, and then it shows the main CSS, which is empty. So what we can do from this Manage Styles tab is we can go from here, shift click to there, and then drag them all to the main CSS. Now this is cool. I'm going to do File, Save All. Main CSS overwrite, fine. Now watch what's happened. We'll come up to our head section. All of that CSS that we put in the head is gone, and it's been moved into this external style sheet. That's really, really handy when you're looking to rapidly prototype stuff. We can close that out now. The main DWT can close out. And we can do, let's close this too because we don't need it anymore at all. We can do select the root, create from dynamic web template, pick the one that we built, and there it is. Now when we save that, it'll be predisposed to be the default, which is fine. But we don't want it in document, we want it in this folder here, save. So there's our main page of this site. Next step, we need to have folders, because the way that I designed the architecture on this is you can see in here that I've pathed simply to the folders: product, services, about, and contact. There's actually one more, and you'll find that in the foot, and it is legal. So what we'll do is click the root, new, folder, and then I'll copy it, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and so we can do products, services, about, contact, and then legal. Now here's a real quick trick. We'll copy this default HTML, and then we'll just Control V, Control V, Control V. Now we've effectively pasted a default page into each of the folders. And that's pretty much all there is for this, except for obviously changing the content and so on and so forth, changing the page title. Let's first do this one. We'll say home page, and then we'll get rid of this, just so that we can tell that there's a difference. In fact, I'm even going to get rid of the paragraph that contained it. Save it, preview it, and here it comes. So we're on home. You can see, oh, what happened here? This is a prime example of why you want to do, and why I didn't check, I don't know. On preview, we want to do for all web pages. And instead of seeing that Windows Explorer window, we're actually going to be fed the default document. So let me just make that quick change. Default, view. You can see down here it's spun up the Expression Dev Server, not a problem. And we should see our page. And there it is. And now we're seeing it from the actual server. Products, services, about us, contact us, and then finally legal. And so there's all the pages. It's a pretty quick way to create a site, and it's completely yours. All this artwork is yours, and by using the dynamic web template and a few little tricks, you can really rapidly prototype it. When we come back, the coolest part of creating your own graphics is going to be exposed to you, and I think you're really going to like it. So let's take a break, and when we come back, I'll show you the biggest benefit of having your own graphics template, and we're going to roll back into Expression Design and then come back to Expression Web. It's pretty cool. Okay, so this is what I want to show next, and this is probably my favorite part about creating your own graphics templates. Let's say you've done all this work and you show it to the client and they don't like it. Maybe there's something in the graphics. It's simple enough to change the code, the names and the navigation, and change the CSS to affect the colors in here. But the graphics, here's what we can do. We'll double click that and bring back Expression Design. And we'll zoom in a little bit on this. And let's say that the problem that the user had, or that the client had, was didn't like that color. So let's go to our color tab, and we'll go into the beach swatches one more time. And to make it a little bit more masculine, perhaps the client wanted blue. So that's blue. Oop. Let's roll down, and let's say we want to, let me get past that slice layer, and we just want to lighten this up a little bit too dark for their taste. So we can always go into here and see what we can find. Yeah, that's probably still too light. Let's take this one. Even though it's from a different swatch, there's no reason that you have to stay within one. And then we're done. Got that. So we also might want to do this. Grab our little shape tool, give ourselves one of those. Oop, that's not the right shape. And we're going to take off the stroke. Every object has a fill, that which you've just seen, and a stroke, which is the outside edge. So I could actually make the outside edge, instead of no stroke, I could make it green. Real ugly, but I could. Anyway, there's a shape for reference, and we want another shape to reference this color here. And instead of going back into the thing, just grab it there. I'm going to take off my stroke, go back to the fill, and grab this color. And then grab my pick tool and bring that down, make it a little bit smaller, grab that one. And it's always nice to have a color reference in the file. Now, let's center this back up. Bring our slice layer back. Unfortunately, we're going to have to stretch that slice out just a little bit. They're all named what they were named before, and that's the key. So what we can do is File, Export, same location, document HTML, and in the same thing. Okay? We'll hit Export All. It realizes, Expression Design realizes that these exist already, and we'll select Replace. That's it. It's done. Let's go back. Do I want to save these changes? I do not. Now, this is the really cool thing. When you come back, Expression Web won't realize that there have been changes. So you can press F5 on your keyboard, and it changed all of this stuff. For some reason, I don't have my change here on this. Let's preview this and see if the change shows up. Yep, there it is. So that was just a little confusion within Expression Web. But without changing a single line of code or a single drop of CSS, this line is now blue, This sandy area is now lighter. And also remember that this little piece here in this div is also part of the graphics package that we exported. And so you can, and obviously you go into the CSS and maybe change these so that they'd roll over to this blue from the pink mauve. And if we go to products, we even have our little items. Because you remember we killed that off in the home page, but we did not do that in the other pages. So we can actually sample out these colors. And really, really fast way to have radical changes without touching a single line of HTML code. In fact, this is kind of irritating me. Let me close it and then reopen it. And it's still showing. That's very, very unusual. I don't know why, but we know that it works because we previewed it in a browser. And that's just another reason why you can't always trust what you see, and the what you see is what you get. You really do need to use browser preview or snapshot panel. But that, in my opinion, is the best part about being able to roll from the graphics program into the web editing program, is because you can make such radical changes and not touch a single line of code. So there you go. That's the wrap on Chapter 6. I recommend that you go through the book and take a good look, because we have a segment in the book about creating a secondary style sheet that will cause this website to print without the top banner, without the navigation, and without the footer. So we're actually using a separate style sheet to swap out its appearance when it hits the printer or print preview. So there you go. Hope it helps. Make sure that you play with some graphics tool. If it's not Expression Design, try another one. But a graphics tool is going to be key to success if you want to do web design.